How's it going? We're doing a quick little project video tonight. It's going to be something a little bit different than some of the standard sort of 3D stuff. So we're going to be using a program called Slicer for Fusion 360, not really for Fusion 360, and the laser cutter and some paints, and we're gonna cut out a layered map of Texas. Why? Why not? Just to We're just gonna do something different. So what you're first going to need is Slicer for Fusion 360. So caveat, so Slicer for Fusion 360 doesn't really work with Fusion 360 anymore. Fusion 360 has sort of developed and done its own thing, and Slicer hasn't really kept up with it. That doesn't mean you can't use Slicer standalone. You don't have to use it with Fusion 360. So it used to be cool because you could have a body or a model in Fusion 360, and if you had the if you had the add-in or the app add-on for Slicer, then you could basically right-click and say, hey, throw this in Slicer, and it would just pull it out of Fusion and throw it in there. Well, that little piece doesn't really work too well anymore. Now, doesn't mean Slicer doesn't work. It does. It just doesn't work very well with Fusion. That Fusion integration is kind of broke. But if you have an STL, or if, let's say, if you have a body that you've exported out of Fusion 360 and you want to do this, you can. So that being said, you can't. So the way you used to go get this is you would go into Fusion, you'd go to your add-ons. You can't do that anymore. So real simple way to get Slicer still is just to go to the old Googles and type in Slicer for Fusion 360. The very first article that pops up is this one, and this tells you everything I just did. Is that, hey, this has been deprecating. We're no longer actively developing it, and blah 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 blah. Okay, whatever. Download your version for Windows or Mac and install it. You don't have to sign in. You don't have to do anything. There's no, like you see here, I'm not even signed in. I'm just using it standalone. So you don't have to have necessarily a Fusion, an Autodesk account, or it gives you some errors like, hey, you need to go and acknowledge a couple things, and you click those links and they go nowhere. So you just kind of X past them. They don't really mean anything. And then you can just open Slicer up standalone. You don't have to use it through Fusion. So anyway, that's what I've done. And I have downloaded this Texas model of off of Thingiverse, and this is the one I used. In case you want to use the same one, you want to use a different state, whatever, there are tons. I use this Thingiverse Thing 1138407 by Daniel Chai Tea Latte. Daniel Chai Tea Latte. And I like it because it's exaggerated in the Z. So obviously, we don't have peaks and valleys and mountains like this in Texas. Even on the western side, there's definitely hills, mountain-ish stuff happening. But I like this because of the effect that we're going to do with the layers. This is going to help a lot. So I have downloaded that. I have also done like on the state of California, and I've done a couple other ones, but I hail from Texas currently, so that's what I'm going to do. So when you bring this in, here will be an import button. You click that, you pick your STL to bring it in. I pre-did it because my computer's butt slow. And so once that comes in, you can specify whether you want your inches or millimeters. I chose millimeters, and I left it at default, all the default sizes it comes in, because this was a good size for my laser cutter. So 203 millimeters, 187, 24. So it says it's an inch thick. And which is totally fine, like I said. And there's lots of cool detail in this model. Peaks, valleys, rivers, streams, lakes, blah, blah, blah. Don't care. Not really going to use them. Because when I go through the slicing portion of this, it gets rid of most of the detail and just breaks it down into layers. So first and foremost, or nextly, we're going to go to construction technique, and I'm going to say I want stacked slices. And because of how this model came in, it's stacking them vertically because that's how the model is imported. That's not what I want. So I actually want to change my slice direction by clicking this. And now I can rotate this guy and actually click on that outer ring, and I'm going to rotate this guy 90. So now to recalculate, and now I have some stacked slices. Now there are lots of little things in here, and this is showing that there's really kind of 1, 2, 3, 4-ish main slice bodies and then 5 and a bunch of these little random ones. I don't really care about those. I'm not going to get that creepy crazy with it. But what I am going to do is come down to... Oh, and so I'm going to say that I'm going to do plywood, because that's what I'm using. So you get a kind of a cool view of that. Now I'm using 3mm birch plywood, so I don't get all of these rad little lines in there. It would be cool, like if I had a bigger CNC, I would actually make a really big version of this. But what I really want to look at here is the manufacturing settings. So this is calling out, again, so the material size, I'm going to change this to millimeters, because I know I'm using 3mm plywood. Now this says that my default stack is going to be 4.5mm. Now you can play with this. The thickness is good if you're really going to go full bore and you're going to use all of the layers that it gives you. Then seeing this and seeing it update is great, because now you have really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 7 different layers. But I'm gonna leave it at 3. And what I opted to do was go ahead and cut out the stuff that I wanted, and just not do the other stuff. So doing was I stuck with 3mm, but again, you can play with anything you want here. And I just decided after I cut it out and exported the stuff what I wanted to keep, and I ended up keeping this layer, and this layer. Or more to the point, probably this bottom layer and this layer and this layer. But the nice thing after this is now you can say get plans. And you have your options to download. So you can pick here your letter size, so what page size you want this to export in. I did it in standard 8.5 by 11. It's fine. I know that size fits inside of my laser just fine. And down here you want to pick your file type. Now I think this is one of the deprecated or broken issues in here. So when I downloaded this as a DXF that would normally import straight into my laser, when I tried pulling open an Inkscape or a couple different programs, it was blank. So I'm not sure what the dealio is there. So I'm going to say PDF, because I'll end up bringing this thing into Inkscape to do a little tweaking and tuning with it. So I'll pick PDF, export to my computer. And I've already done it, so I'm not going to go do it again, but I'll bring it up in Inkscape to show you. And hit save, and you're all done. So pretty slick, it's pretty cool. Again, this doesn't just have to be states you're working on. This will work for any model you're bringing that you want to sort of slice up. So you've got a cool skull or whatever, but so it's a shame that it's sort of deprecated, and maybe they've replaced it in Fusion with something. Although I haven't seen anything that really pulls this in. I'll have to do a little bit more research, honestly. So let me open up Inkscape here. So we're going to go File and Open, and I'm going to go ahead and pull in this Texas. So this Texas 1 and 2 are my actual outputs that I saved as SVG files for my laser to use, but I'll show you the process here. So it's asking select page 1 out of 3. So I know that if you move around here, you can see exactly what you're going to be cutting out. So I cut out, I kind of ignored page 1 because there's lots of stuff there, and what it was trying to do was take all those little pieces and cram everything onto the page so that you could easily cut it out. And the numbers are cool because back over here in Slicer, it gives you the assembly steps to put all this together. So you can scroll through and go 1, and then you're going to go 2 on 1, 3, 4, all that good stuff. So these are your different layers. So I ignored that just for this project because I'm only using 3 layers. So I went with page 2. So I'm going to go okie doke and bring this guy in. And so you can see I get a default blue line. So I'm going to go ahead and actually get, so there are a lot of artifacts that come in here. So I'm going to get rid of this outer. Oh, shnikes. I'm going to control delete that, undo. Hello. Whew. That was a close one. So let's pick this. Mother of God, this is going off the rails quick. Break apart. This looks weird, but it's okay. There, it's all back. So now you can see my outer box, and I can pick this guy by itself. So I'm going to pick the outer box here, delete, close. I'm going to get rid of this 7, don't need that. I don't need this stuff in the middle. I don't need this little guy down here. I don't need this little guy. I certainly don't need this little guy. So now I'm going to make sure that that the fill and stroke is appropriate here. So no fill, because I don't want any fill. I'm not rastering this, I'm just cutting. My default here, this would be an engraved color for my laser. So I want 255 red for my little K40. And then I also want to document properties, and I need to size my page correctly 2 millimeters and rescale my content. Okay, so that is my first layer. You can see it's backwards, so it's fine. I mean, I can always, it doesn't matter. It's going to cut. I can just flip it over. Well, doesn't matter. And then I save this. And so what I end up with is two files. So this, and I'll bring in the other one. Open recent and Texas dose. And so this was the other file that I ended up with. I did not end up using this little piece. So I ended up using this guy as my first layer, and then this guy and this guy as layer 2 and 3. So anyway, that's what we did. So now we're going to send these out to the laser and cut them out and go from there.
So Texas size 10-4.
Over and out.